Welcome to the this special City Commission special meeting for GRU budget presentations and discussions. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first item is the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All right, we have a motion and second to adopt the agenda as printed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Sacco, Chestnut, and Decker Walker not here.
Mr. Mayor, our business discussion item for today is 2023-462, presentation on the budget reduction plan related to the development of GRU's FY24 budget, with a recommendation that the City Commission hear a presentation from staff.
Very good. Mr. Cunningham.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, so we do just have one item today. As you all know, we started our budget presentations back in February. This is one of those presentations in the line. Today is really all about, on April 13th, the City Commission unanimously passed a commitment to a goal of 70% capitalization rate in the next 10 years. In order to do that, after that meeting, we stepped back and looked at our budget that we were preparing for this year, and I had to identify reductions in expenses to meet that goal. So today is really to talk through what those specific reductions are to our budget in order to meet that goal. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Mark Benton. He's our Director of Accounting and Finance, and he will give the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Welcome.
as the General Manager said, we're here today to talk about the proposal to execute the commitment, the first year of the commitment we made back on April 13th to generate the cumulative $28 million in budget reductions. First, I want to briefly cover where we are on the timeline. You've had 3 presentations, one on debt, one on the government services contribution formula. Mr. Camhood gave us the customer sales and revenue forecast. We're here today to talk about the budget reduction plan. Next week, you'll hear from us on fuels, fuel levelization, connection charges, and lighting. In July, we have 2 meetings where you'll hear the meat of the budget. You'll hear the detail on the O&M and the capital. In August, you'll have a chance to ask questions and have some discussions. Hopefully, give us a head nod so that we can start the ordinance creation, and then the 2 public meetings in September. Not surprisingly, GRU's FY24 budget was significantly influenced by the 2 primary findings in the Auditor General's report. One on the fact that our debt is higher than most municipal utilities, and the fact that we didn't have a consistent methodology for transferring money from GRU to general fund in general government. On April 13th, you heard a joint presentation from GRU and general government. Was in 2 parts addressing those items. First, to set a 10-year time frame to meet that 70% capitalization rate target that had been established back in October as part of our debt management policy. And then the formula methodology, proxy for property tax and franchise fee, to be known in the future as government services contribution. The GPC unanimously approved those proposals. You also codified it on May 4th with a resolution on the GSC. And what that generates is requires $315 million in net debt reduction over the next decade. And that $315 million comes from several sources. First off is a reduction of about $120 million over the next decade in the amount that GRU will pay to general government to their general fund on the GSC. There's $91 million in what we term organic debt reduction, and that is simply the fact that we project that we're going to pay $91 million more in principal, pay that down than we're going to issue over the next decade. There's $76 million in excess revenue generated by the recurring base rate increases in the electric system and the wastewater system through 2027 that were put in place as part of the 22 budget. And then finally, what we're here to talk about today is the cumulative $28 million in GRU budget reductions over the next decade. if you average it out, $2.8 million a year over the next 10 years, making those cuts is a little more problematic for GRU, and based on the fact that we've exercised some fiscal restraint over the last 5 years. If you look at the numbers up there, from between the budget years of 19 and 23, GRU's O&M budget only increased about 1.8%. Our FTEs only went up 1.6%. And that FTE increase was primarily driven by the fact that we brought over NACE contract employees that came on when we brought DHR on. We converted them from contractual employees to GRU employees, and therefore they became FTEs. And in FY23, it's not reflected in the numbers up there. We further reduced the FTEs by dropping 5 line worker positions. So the next 3 slides, we're going to go over the detail of what we have in year 1 of our proposed budget reductions. The way we handle this, our operating departments submit their budgets to the general manager. He reviewed them, went over them, went back to them and said, we're looking for budget cuts. They provided those. He either approved or disapproved them. And these are the cuts that came out of that. This first slide is on labor. What you have here are 20 positions, 20 currently unfilled positions. There are nobody in these seats currently. When you throw in the fringe on top of the direct salaries and wages, it comes to just under $2 million in labor reductions for 24 and 25, because we are going to essentially unfund these positions for those 2 budget years. The next 2 slides cover our non-labor reductions. The way these tables are set up, across the top you have the area from which the reduction is being made, and down on the left-hand side you have the expense category that's being affected. The combination of this slide and the next one is just over $1.4 million. So when you roll those together, what we're proposing for the first year of these 10-year cuts is about $3.4 million. So this is what we're proposing to deliver in the first year of those 10-year cuts. We want to acknowledge, and we're well aware that we've got some challenges that aren't really addressed in year 1 here. You see them listed up there. That we have nothing in that first year related to the results from the IRP. There are no potential plant decommissioning costs. We still have some decisions to make about GRUCOM, about how it's going to be structured in the organization. And we're looking at some potential regulatory and legislative changes. We feel fairly certain that these challenges are going to dictate additional iterations of O&M and capital costs above and beyond what we've presented here today for that $3.4 million in the first year. So that's what we've got to present, and we're happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
See any lights at all? There you go. All right, Commissioner Book.
I'm new to that, Mr. Mayor, just to say that these are very, very painful, and I appreciate the work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Eastman.
Yeah, I also appreciate the work. I know, speaking with some of the folks that were within some of the departments, I know that they've taken this all very seriously, and are really looking to cut this. And I've also been looking over at general government side and saying that we're all in this together, and that it's that these are all tough cuts. I do have some questions there. Let me see here on the non-labor O&M costs. Contractual services seems to be the largest cut in here. Is there any detail as to what we mean when we say contractual services on? I mean, energy supply looks like big, and then water wastewater is also a very large cut here.
So, Mr. Mayor, Brett Goodman, he's our Chief Operating Officer. He worked with the operational areas to develop what those reductions are, and so he'll answer that in detail.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Brett Goodman, Chief Operating Officer, GRU. So, good question so what we did when we went to the different officers is what we tried not to do is just a one-size-fits-all approach, is try to figure out where we could go into the operational areas and figure out where we'd have the least amount of pain. And so contract service is one of those things where we looked at in different operational areas do different things. So a contract service might be, hiring a contract to fix a generator, or it might be a planned project that involves renting a crane, all kinds of different things that we do with the contract services. But what we try to do when we reach out to those areas is make sure that the emphasis was we're not cutting anything that erodes safety, that we are not going to sacrifice environmental compliance. And so what that comes to is, you kind of start bundling in, well, where are you going to find that money is generally, I would say the contract services cuts are where we're taking a less proactive role with our maintenance. So something that we would have, things that are essential, we're going to continue to do. Things that are preferred in the future, we'd like to be more proactive with. That's what we're cutting, and trying to make those distinguishing differences within each one of the operational areas to make sure that we can, do the essential things, not sacrifice safety, not sacrifice regulatory compliance. And so it's kind of different in different areas. And then the other thing, I wanted to be proactive with the potential question is on in the water wastewater budget specifically, there's a line item for chemicals.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to assure people we're going to continue to use the same chemicals, same value volume. What that does reflect is, if there is any good news with this, is we've seen significant market change in the chemicals we use. So it's a market adjustment. When we put together the budgets several months ago, escalation factors were still pretty predominant. And so these prices we had to provide have to, live for the next 12 months. And so we've seen some of those prices start to taper off, especially in the chemical commodities. And so we just wanted to make a market adjustment wherever we could.
Right. And so you kind of answered the question, which is my understanding of, when you're trying to make short-term cuts within the utility is exactly what you said. I mean, you start cutting those maintenance costs, which I guess is more art than science, right? You don't know what could be a problem in 3 or 4 years, but assumedly, the more that you spend in maintenance costs, the less likely that something that would be a much larger cost could come up, in the next 4 or 5 years. But I'm guessing you guys obviously took a look at that, tried to figure out, what were really critical maintenance costs, like vegetation is always something that comes up on the energy delivery side.
Yeah, we don't want to cut things that are ultimately going to haunt us next year, but there are things we're pushing off and deferring that we know are ultimately going to come back. We need to, change this motor out, or we need to do these. While they're not essential now, they're going to become. And so for this budget year, we just push them into the future.
Okay. And then I see some cuts here on the electric meter measurements, and then some things related to AMI. I can imagine for a new project like that coming up, like AMI going online, you're not
Right.
quite sure what kind of needs there would be on something like that. But
Right.
do we feel like we'll be adequately staffed to ensure that that comes on? That'll be a fairly smooth rollout with the AMI.
So that's the intent is with the AMI, there's going to be a transition for how those meters are read. Certainly don't want to, stop reading meters. So as that AMI project unfolds, we want to be appropriately staffed for as that transition happens.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll follow up to a couple things. So one is, when we looked at this, we looked at, we need to develop a 10-year plan, but we had a pretty short window. So we looked at developing a short, kind of a shorter plan to meet this year and getting into next year, but we'll have a longer range plan as we develop it over next year. So that's one. The second thing is AMI is a good example. Again, kind of like the chemicals thing that Brett referenced, which is the AMI team was projecting forward of what staffing they're going to need and what that's going to look like. Now, as they've been in the midst of the project and they've been developing it, they identified some areas where they didn't need certain staffing, and that's what you're seeing reflected here.
Okay, thank you. Actually have, Commissioner Willits will let you go and roll. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it sounds like to some of these reductions is squeezing out a little more life out of some infrastructure, but does it mean that it's more likely in the future that we'll have a sudden need for maintenance or repair as opposed to more of a planned replacement, repair, maintenance, does this mean though that there's a greater likelihood that we'll have to suddenly or unplanned repair and maintain things?
So I'll answer quickly and maybe follow up if we need to, Brett. But what I would say is it increases the risk of that, but we tried to identify areas where we didn't see that being the reality. So you do increase the risk anytime you reduce some maintenance. I do want to say, when we talk about deferred maintenance, we are deferring a little bit of maintenance, but it's a small portion of overall. So we're doing our preventative maintenance, we're maintaining our systems, we're keeping them going. These are smaller reductions in areas that people in those areas that operate those areas, that are managers, supervisors, develop the places where they could trim back.
Okay, that answers that for me. And then the challenges we see ahead, or kind of we don't know exactly how they're going to impact as we develop our IRP going into the future, and then the plant decommissioning. The IRP is perhaps maybe a little more predictable, or rather we know it is coming. We know we're very soon are going to have things to look at and to consider. But on the plant decommissioning, I did have a question about how much of that can we not have to look at in 24 or 25, because that is still past the 25. Is that when we mention that as one of those challenges, is that really part of the 10-year challenge, or is that part of the 1 and 2 year challenge?
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I would say that's more of the 10-year challenge, and we will identify what those costs are. You have to make some decisions on how you decommission. We'll be making those decisions and developing those costs as part of the IRP process. So the IRP process will identify those things, but I think it's safe to say that there's nothing in the 24 or 25 budget that we would have for decommissioning. It would be further down the road and kind of shown out through the IRP process.
But will there be anything in 24, 25 that we, after we see the full IRP, that we will need to move on possibly as well? I know the decommissioning is further down the road, those kind of expenses, but anything else potentially that could come up in the IRP that could affect maybe not 2024, but 2025?
Yes, I would think from the IRP, there might be things where you begin the planning or design parts in 25, but not the actual construction of anything. So there could be things like that. I'm looking at Eric Walters, who's running the IRP process, to get the head nod. But so, I think in 25 you could start that planning process, but it wouldn't be a significant investment yet. That's further down the road.
All right, well, thank you. I just wanted to kind of talk about that. So it is, because anytime we say there's kind of these unknowns out there, that some of that it's not this 2024 budget year or even possibly 2025. It's a little further out. So we got to do what we can do right now with what we do understand and we do know. And I think that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions and want to deviate from the reductions into a potential, well, I have some questions about it. But first, under reductions, LEAP is a big number on here. Does that leave us with, what does that leave us with for LEAP?
Yes, so Mr. Mayor, what we did with LEAP, so I'm going to give a little bit of history and then I'll answer the question specifically. So what we did with LEAP is we have modified the program so that we're able to impact individual homes greater, a broader base of people that we can impact on the income kind of criteria, and what we can do in a home. So we broadened the program to do all of those things. As part of that, we budgeted a larger budget than we had historically. And this reduction is bringing it back down, but still not back to its historic level. So we're still budgeting more in LEAP than we have historically. In addition to that, we're in year 2 of a 3-year ARPA distribution of funds that is also going toward LEAP that has allowed us to increase the number of homes impacted. So we're hoping to do over 200 or around 200 homes each year. This reduction reduces that by about 23 homes. So by pulling these funds out of it for 24 and 25 each year, that would be about 20 to 23 homes less with those funds reduced. But we still have a significant number, between the two, I think we're, again, approaching around 200 homes that we would be able to benefit from the program.
Very good, all right. There's also a note in here for office supplies and printing, utility bills and envelopes. And this is, I'm putting you on the spot asking off the top of your head. So it's okay if you don't know the exact number, but about how many bills, paper bills, do we still send out?
So off the top of my head, I think it's about 75% of the bills are still paper bills. Kenzan shaking his head.
So about 75,000, yeah.
Correct. So it is, we still have a significant number. One of the things that we try to track and we try to encourage and have marketing plans for is to people convert to e-bills, because it is a savings to do that for our customers. And so we are still pushing that, but it's still about 75% are receiving paper bills.
Have we given consideration to a charge for paper bills? And there are a whole lot of organizations that do that.
So we have
Not an exorbitant one, but
Right.
something that defrays the cost.
So we've had different discussions about, doing things like whether it's a charge or whether it's you have to opt into a paper bill instead of opting into an electric, go electric, you go to the e-bill but opt in the other way. But we haven't landed on a strategy yet beyond marketing and communication to try to get folks to convert. So I think that's on the table of things that we could do that could encourage people to go to e-bills.
If it costs us $1 a bill, that's $900,000 a year. Just doing the real quick math. That's approaching $1 million pretty hard. Either as revenue or looking at it from a cost reduction. So, all right, Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hearing Commissioner Willis talk about kind of the dichotomy of the short term versus the long term, that did lead me to a couple of questions on our slide. Mr. Benton, is it possible to go to the budget reduction plan slide? I just want to make sure I have the understanding of the figures. It's the line items starting with, that's it. So understanding the process, the 3.4 million for essentially what we call year one on the 10-year plan, I think falls under the line item of GRU expense reductions, 28 million plus on the 10 years. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
So then I would think when you talk there's additional iterations, there may be expenses that we don't know. The 3.4 million ends up being something between 2 million and 3.4 million. And that ties into basically a 10-year plan of about 2.8 million a year, given the fact that we have all kinds of figures and factors that we can't anticipate. Does that seem right? That's correct. Okay, so I have that figure right. So then the organic debt reduction, which is the 91 million, give me an example of what, I know we talked a little bit about that previously, but what might that be that's not included in some of our other slides?
Well, obviously we have existing outstanding debt. We know what the amortization of that outstanding debt is, how much we're going to pay down in principal over the next 10 years. What we did was we projected what we would be issuing in debt over the next decade based on the capital improvement plans that have been submitted by the departments. So we looked at how much we would have to borrow, how much we would pay out of equity for that. So we knew what the principal that we were adding from the new, and then we projected what principal we would be paying down on that new debt. When we combine those two, we have about $91 million more that we are projecting to pay down in principal versus what we are expecting to issue over that period of time.
So these are some of the other things that are coming before us when we do some swaps and some bond swaps and some looking for favorable rates, I think. And in doing that and aggressively pursuing that, that's essentially what we're looking at that probably gets us in this range.
Yeah, this essentially represents what we expect our debt portfolio profile, how it will change over the next 10 years, irrespective of the other items that are on that slide.
All right, thank you very much. My last is just a comment. It's not really related to the money. I know that you've basically frozen or eliminated 20 positions. It really depends on what that looks like over the next probably 1 to 3 years. But there are positions, we've talked about this, that you had trouble filling really at the line item, the people who are doing the work. And these are like your meter readers, for example. An AMI will make some of those individuals not necessary for that function. But I know that some of the long-term planning for GRU, regardless of what happens as it relates to the commission, should be that those folks that are still doing those frontline work that may be not necessary for their functions, that we find career and technical upward mobility for them elsewhere in the organization. And that doesn't affect this, not one bit, because there'll be other positions that they can do and work. And that's, I think that's the current plan for our workforce.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any of the lights right now, so do we have anyone for public comment?
Mr. Mayor, we have 2 speakers, Donald Shepard and Holly Blunt.
Mr. Shepherd?
And my name's Donald Shepard, the People's Representative, and my comments is that questions are that this is something we've reviewed before. I appreciate your effort towards cutting this and that and taking balance out the budget reduction, and I think that there is so much more on this repairs that is head-boggling to taking, be able to take account on that, but nobody's done that. Nobody's made a count on how much repair is needed in behalf of the city or the people. I appreciate your meter reading ideal. I don't see where an II can take and do the quality work that a person can do. So I'm not for these AIs. My other question is that I'm still waiting on my refund check from GRU from years ago, and I haven't received it. And I still want to know if there's been any improvement or movement towards the transformers on 4th or 5th Street that other people came to the podium and asked about to be replaced, and have they or have they not? And that's my comment, sir.
Okay.
And,
Thank you.
that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Blount.
I have a sinking feeling. I'm looking at something called perceptual distortion in the face of objective reality. I mean, all these arrangements and plans being made for GRU, what's the assurance? I fully expect the governor is going to sign that bill, and that this new board coming in will probably, won't you think they'll just unravel everything you've done deliberately for that reason, if not particularly any other reason than to just undo everything you've arranged. I worry about that for the city overall, and I wonder if people are looking ahead at the real possibility that the governor may be considering fully taking the city into receivership, and what things can endure into that situation. I think thinking about GRU should be the same thing. What things can endure into a situation where somebody has the option to tear it to pieces. I wish you, I think you're just trying to hold on tight and hope for the best, but you need to be planning for the worst at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Blount. Rest assured, that is indeed the case, that we are trying to do both, but there's only so much that is possible to do. So,
Mr. Mayor, that concludes our speakers.
okay. I don't see any other lights. Commissioner Eastman.
I also saw, as I'm going back through this, the round number of 50,000 under community relations other. What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so that is a reduction in the basically the community relations part, we do sponsorships with different groups throughout our community, and so we reduced that budget by about 50%.
Okay. All right. Well, that kind of brings me to jumping off of Mr. Blount's point. My read of kind of that when this transition's over, we're going to have to figure out a whole lot of various things related to what is within the power of the GRU authority versus GRU currently. And one of the things that strikes me is that GRU up until this point has had the powers of home rule municipality, that anything that is not stopped by general law, GRU is allowed to do. Under this one, I believe, with an agency that is not under the direct delegation of the legislative body, it's significantly more limited to only what it is allowed to do, which is whatever is written in House Bill 1645. I worry about sponsorships. I worry about the LEAP program, various things that are not explicitly related to the management of the utilities. I know that it's one of many questions related to the legalities and what would be allowed in there, but the sponsorship seems, I've read Attorney General opinions that speak specifically to that point as to whether or not something like this could do sponsorships. That, obviously this budget may have to change at some point once that occurs, but, it's just something to be on the lookout for, is what would be an allowable expense. And when this transition's over, which I believe would be July 1st is when our charter changes, even though they're seated October 4th, those sections or anything related to any provisions within it would be fairly quick. Mr. Blount, I hear you. Everyone's working on it, and we're just sort of in a weird limbo here between running a city and making sure that city is going and that GRU is going, that all of the employees that we have over there have stability and have the ability to work with it, while at the same time realizing that, that handoff is probably will have to happen at some point soon. And it's at the top of our mind and sort of the 800-pound gorilla in the room as we have this conversation. But we're certainly taking a look at it, and it's something that we're planning for. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of echo some of what Commissioner Eastman said about, we have to run our city. We have to continue to do it. We have a budget. It has to start on October 1st. Our staff we have to do this anyways, no matter what a new authority will do with GRU or how exactly it'll work, or if there's anything unforeseen, if the bill is not as tight as they think it is and there's some unforeseen complications. We still have to do this. JLAC told us very specifically the findings, and this portion leads us towards that. We would need to be doing this anyways outside of whatever Representative Clemens thinks. Outside of that, the whole Florida legislature, the portion of it that is JLAC already told us we had some issues and identified them, and that's what we're working on. And this is good due diligence. It may not be exactly what we want, but we've gotten the guidance from JLAC. So this is the task before us. I don't think they're fun things. I don't think it's those 20 positions or so probably could have definitely helped GRU, could have added, it could have lightened the workload, added their knowledge, and really helped. But this is what we're tasked with. I did have a question about, Manager Cunningham, about, and this is getting a little of this is into the GRU authority bill, but I want to know how it plays out in the next 2 years, about when we send our line workers to aid post-hurricane and other places, is that a fiduciary, or is that a financial concern? The new authority can't make decisions that are outside of, they can't make any decisions that are based on goodwill. And so does that all pencil out for us and actually benefit our customers, our ratepayers, to send our folks to other places after storms?
Sure, yeah, Mr. Mayor. So what we have is what are called mutual aid agreements. So those mutual aid agreements include, so if we're going to another city and we have a mutual aid agreement with them, it includes the costs associated with that. So they pay for all of the expenses of the overtime and all the expenses of our employees going there, and they'll pay us directly for that. So it's we recover all of the costs that the utility takes on through those mutual aid agreements. And we only go to a place where both have the mutual aid agreement between the two parties.
All right. I just wanted to confirm. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I will say too, I'm going to read you a statement that I sent over to the general manager to go out in a press release end of last week. And before I do that, I want to make it real clear that we can't operate on assumptions about what may or may not happen. We can't. We don't have that opportunity even, nor should we try to guess what might happen. There are lots of different things that an authority could move forward with or could not move forward with. We can't let those things enter into our decision making, honestly. We have to make good decisions based on what's in front of us and what we are charged with and what we have sworn ourselves to do as commissioners. So our job is to put this budget together within the constraints of what, as Commissioner Willetts has already said, the Joint Legislative Audit Committee has made very clear they expect. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. But reducing $315 million worth of debt to the people of Gainesville is not a bad thing anyway. That's a positive move forward. It's a painful process, but it is a positive move to reduce $315 million worth of debt. So consider it from that perspective as well. What I said to the general manager the other day was the following: as mayor and as an owner and a customer of GRU, I know that it's critically important that the lights stay on and the water flows where it's supposed to, when it's supposed to. All of that is non-negotiable, and I will continue to work hard to support the women and men who make sure that happens. While I have disagreements and concerns with the process of this bill, please make no mistake that the continued excellent delivery of services from our municipal utility is my priority. And I can't speak for everybody else, but I think that is a shared opinion generally. Regardless, this is what we do. It's our job to do this, regardless of what might come July 1st or what might come October 1st or anything like that. We certainly will, I think, consider ways to make sure the people of Gainesville are kept whole throughout this process, but that is not what today's job is. Today's job is to consider this portion of budget preparation as we move forward. So there you go. I don't see any other lights. Any other staff comments? Or?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. All right. So member comment. All right. It looks like we are adjourned. I will see you all on Wednesday.